Do you ever feel that your professional life is competing with your family life, your home life? And it doesn't matter what you do, it always seems as if nothing is ever enough. And you always feel like you're trying to catch up, regardless of what you do. Today, I want to talk to you a bit about how to reduce friction in your relationships and in your home life and boost performance at work. Now, the issue that most people are having is that there is some confusion between the communication and the message sent versus message that is received. So, what does that look like? For example, I was talking to a client a few weeks ago, and he says, Andrew, I feel like in all my doing, nothing is ever good enough. I feel like I'm doing so much, and when I come home, it feels like it's never enough. Like on the job, I am the man. On the job, I'm getting it done. On the jobs, man, I'm slaying. And I'm taking no prisoners. Hope that makes sense to you. And that was his words. He was like, it's happening. I'm making this thing happen. But when I get home, it feels like, well, I feel like I'm a loser. I feel like I can't get it right. I feel like it's not happening. I feel like nothing I do is ever enough. I feel like, wow, just like a complete failure. Well, if that's you, I want to help you to solve that problem right now. My name is Andrew Guy, and my goal is to help high performance individuals find clarity so they can thrive under pressure without burning out. Here is what needs to happen. I think a lot of times people, especially high performance individuals, they struggle with communication. So the first part of this video is going to help you to solve the communication problem first. And I think that's where the real issue is. When we talk about communication, we're talking about message sent versus message received. So if I type in my phone, if I pick up my phone and I type 123, right? Then you pick up your phone, I'm sending you those numbers. Well, you should get the text that says 123. But here's where the problem arises. I type 123, the other person get 321. I will type 1 and 2, the other person will get 12. I will type 3 plus 1, the other person will get 31. Okay? Are you getting my drift? The goal is that the message that we often send is often different from what is received. And so today I want to spend a little time to help you navigate that turmoil that you're feeling, that disposition that's making you feel as if nothing is working out. I want to help to reframe that mindset. So if you're ready, let's start. If you are a professional, if you are a practitioner, if you are a person that's working in healthcare, then you would understand this more. You would understand this to the fact where you can say, Andrew, that resonates with me. I understand what you're saying. And here is what I need you to get. Imagine that a client comes into your office, or it could be a patient if you're a doctor or physician, and the client needs your help, needs your service. But you just started serving the person. You said, oh, I know exactly what you need. And then you assume that based on that assumption, you started doing things. You started applying. Let's say, for example, you are a chiropractor. You started cracking, and if you are a physiotherapist, then you started stretching. And if you are a hair salon person, then you started giving a fade. And if you're a person that does pedicure, then you start doing a manicure. You get the gist. The point is that you started to do things that you think the other person wants, but you have not assessed what their goals are. So the number one thing that you need to do to work on effective communication is to find out or establish what the goals are. Find out what the goal of the listener is. Once you find out the goal, then you want to categorize them. And I've written a few things down, so I'm just going to just run through them with you. There are a few things that you need to get, and here they are. Once you establish the goal, you want to find out if these goals are a want versus a need versus a dream. You want to establish, is this a want? Is this a need? Or is this a dream? A want is just something that I have a desire for. A need is something that is necessary. A dream is like a big longing. It's just something that, wow, if this thing ever happens today, I would be on top of the moon. Okay. And then after, just below that dream, you want to find out what problem, when you accomplish this dream, will it solve? Okay. Now I'm going to go over to the next list of words. Once you establish the goals, you want to find out what are the person's expectations, because there could be some hidden expectation that you don't have a clue about, and you're busy setting off to solve a problem which doesn't really work, and then your good deeds as looked at as just being busybody and not effective because you didn't establish what the goals are. So you want to make sure that you really establish those goals in the first part. It's a foundational step. Once you figure out what those expectations are, you also want to find out what are the person's values. And once you figure out what the values are, you need to also go even deeper and find out what are the meanings, if any, that undergird those values. So let me go back through that again quickly. Once you establish the goals need to be separated and filtered out and find out what their wants are, separate the wants from the need, separate the needs from the dreams, and also figure out how these dreams going to solve a problem once the dream has been realized. Okay. The next part is that you want to find out what are the expectations. Are there hidden expectations that are hidden in these goals that were not discussed? Okay. You want to find out underneath these expectations, what are the values that undergird, that are supporting, that are holding up, that are the pillars to these expectations. So expectations always have some values, and then the values, they got to have a meaning. What are the meanings behind that? Now, once we establish those things, then now we can dig a little deeper and understand the communication. First of all, when a person says, well, you didn't do that, or you didn't give me this, they really are giving you information. Most high performers, professionals, CEOs, once they hear someone say, oh, you didn't do that, they take that as a negative and then they become defensive. Does this ever happen to you? Someone will say, well, you're not doing enough of that. And then, what do you mean I'm not doing enough of that? And then you get upset. And then you're trying to defend that. But I want to do the opposite. Once someone says, imagine, I'm going to give you a perfect example. Here it is. A customer comes in and the customer says, I am looking for flour, or I am looking for cornmeal, or I am looking for canned goods. And then you are the store owner, and then you say, what do you mean? Exactly. The customer is asking for something. Your goal and your mission should be, how can we meet that need? How can we get you canned goods? And specifically, what kind of canned goods would you like? Okay. The next part of that is you want to find out what meaning it has for that individual. Now, let me backtrack and make it clear. Once you have established those goals, you want to make sure that the communication, the message you're sending is what's received. Once the person said you're not given me enough of this, or you don't have enough of what I want, or you don't have this in your store, your goal is not to be defensive. Your goal is to find out, how can I meet that need? How can I address that problem? How can I help that person's dream come true? How and what do I need to do Do I have the resources to get the canned goods, to get the flour, to get the groceries that the customer wants? Okay. I've given you grocery lists to help you to understand that this also works in personal and professional relationships. If a person says they're not getting something, that is not an opportunity for you to be defensive. That is an opportunity for you to listen and say, oh, they're giving me information. This is information that I can use. They are really telling me that there is a need or there's a want that they need solved or need addressed. And so once you find out what the needs are, what the goals are, then you have to communicate that back to them. And here is another way to communicate that back to them to confirm that you're on the right track. So you don't go off on some wild goose chase and say, well, I'm solving the problem for the world. Or you went out and get vegetables, but you didn't get any canned goods. You went out and you got fruits, but you didn't get any flour. You went out and you get a whole bunch of other things that the customer did not ask for. Imagine going into, let's say, a Tim Hortons, and then you walk into the Tim Hortons and you said, well, I need a toasted bagel with cream cheese. But the person gives you a bran muffin. The person gives you green tea, but you want a herbal tea or you want a coffee. Do you see what I'm getting at? So a lot of times the message sent is completely different from what's received. What you want to do to clarify that you hear the right message is to say to the person, did I hear you say? And then repeat what you heard from that person. Once you repeat this to the person will now confirm that, yep, correct. And then you are now empowered to fulfill that need, that want, that dream, meet that expectation, and then you can fulfill that value and you can add more meaning to that person. Does that make sense? So I wanted to go through that because a lot of high performance individuals, CEOs, professionals who are always on the go, they struggle with these kind of situations. And it's almost like a misnomer. It's like a idiosyncrasy that most people struggle with because in layman terms, they always say, well, we're not on the same page or we're not compatible. It's not that you're not compatible. It's because the message that's been sent it's not what has been received. If you are experiencing people pleasing, experiencing anxiety, depression, or just simply need to have a conversation about some of the thoughts, the random thoughts or intrusive thoughts that are operating inside your brain space, please look us up at www.iworkupstairs.com. Until then, take care of yourself and remember, upstairs is the most important piece of real estate you will ever live in.